We have video, though, to show they want their money back for part of the photos missed.
Yeah. You know what? As if there's not enough to feel bad about, it turns out that the chaos and violence, the tens of thousands of drug murders, for example, in Mexico, are our fault. They're America's fault. How do we know this? Because the President of the United States explained it just the other day in Mexico.
Yeah, this comes on the heels of the election, of course, where Mitt Romney reminded voters on a regular basis that President Obama, when he would travel overseas, would go on a bit of an apology tour for the error of America's ways. And he was apologizing for the America of the past. Well, he has done it again in Mexico this morning, where he is talking about the violence down there and the guns that are used to kill individuals in Mexico. And he points directly to the United States and blames us for allowing those guns to cross the border. But fails to make any mention, of course, about the Fast and Furious scandal, which unfolded under President Obama's watch, where thousands of guns were intentionally given to drug cartels and drug lords that ended up killing Americans.
Well, they were supposed to be tracked, but, of course, those 1,700 guns that were given were not tracked, and now those hundreds of those guns have ended up at the scene of homicides. But the president is on a 3-day tour. He spoke mostly to high school and college students there in Mexico. So take a listen and see if you think that it sounds like an apology.
In the United States, we recognize our responsibilities. We understand that much of the root cause of violence that's been happening here in Mexico, for which so many Mexicans have suffered, is the demand for illegal drugs in the United States. We also recognize that most of the guns used to commit violence here in Mexico come from the United States.
He may be accurate in that a majority of the guns do come from the United States. That is factually accurate, according to the Department of Justice, which had testified on this behalf and the number of sources of guns. But the idea that the Mexican government is so virtuous, one of the most corrupt governments in the world, and the drug cartels bought and sold of the police departments there. So if you are on the drug cartel's payroll and you happen to be a police officer, and then a drug cartel comes in, another drug lord comes in and pays you more, then you jump ship and you start protecting that. I mean, corruption, corruption, and corruption. And bodies lining up on the streets of Tijuana and other cities across Acapulco, across Mexico, and it's our fault?
Mexico is a disaster because it has no rule of law. Okay, that's the bottom line. Yes, most weapons in Mexico come from the U.S. Most weapons in Canada come from the U.S., and Canada doesn't have mass killings. Yes, most drugs that move through Mexico come to the United States. Switzerland has billions of dollars of drugs that move through it every year, and it's an orderly country. Again, to restate, Mexico's problems stem from the shortcomings of its government, which is corrupt, larcenous, and in bed with the drug lords. That is not our fault. It is our problem, however, and it's one of the reasons we have 11 million illegal aliens in this country, because they're fleeing the chaos of Mexico. They should be apologizing to us.
And in fact, this obviously is in the midst of the immigration debate in our country. And the president said something interesting when he was in Mexico. He said, we will absolutely get this done. I mean, he virtually gave a guarantee. He said it's going to happen this year. So he is very confident that somehow immigration reform is going to happen, even though the debate here obviously is contentious and it continues.
Well, another character, a person who the president has been citing while he's down there in these speeches, is a guy that angered a lot of Latin America in the past. And it's interesting that he was choosing to cite and even quote this writer, this Mexican writer, famous Mexican writer, Octavio Paz. And one of the things in which Octavio Paz has leveled against the United States back in the 80s, he called America the protector of tyrants. He blamed America for Mexico's inability to modernize back in 1982 when he wrote this famous essay. He is, by all accounts, a liberal Democrat, Octavio Paz, so it wouldn't be surprising that President Obama would cite him as he's trying to relate to the Mexican people down there. But when you look at his past and the things that he's said against America, it's outrageous.
Well, it's also consistent with the international left, which always blames America. America is a deeply imperfect country, but compared to what? Compared to the government of Mexico, which has cozied up to Fidel Castro for 40 years? I mean, compared to the government of any other country. This is a decent country with good intentions. They sometimes go awry. But the idea that we're the cause of disorder in the world is like a flat-out lie. And to nod to anybody who would say something like that and treat him seriously is ridiculous.
Let us know what you think about the president's trip to Mexico and what the message should be there. Meanwhile, coming up.